Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from CBS Television, Hall of Fame sportscaster Leslie Visser and her guest, Paralympian Oscar Pistorius.
Welcome to all. It is, of course, such an honor, a privilege for us to spend a few minutes with one of the most recognized athletes in the world, the man who captivated the Olympic Games. Oscar, for those who haven't heard in person, would you share the emotion of walking into the Olympic Stadium representing yourself, your country, and the disabled?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me here. It was a phenomenal experience. Being known to have the opportunity to represent my country was something that was always going to be fantastic for me. But walking into the stadium in London, we had 80,000 people. They were very energetic, very enthusiastic. And when I walked out, we came out where about the 100-meter start is, and running 400 meters, we had to walk along the home straight. And I saw my family in the second row. I hadn't seen them in a couple of months, so that was fantastic. And my grandmother, she's 90, she was in the stand with the little South African flag that I think my sister must have painted on her cheek. And it was just a fantastic moment, really just knowing that I'd been able to accomplish my goal of qualification and that I'd get that opportunity to do my best job there was great.
Didn't you say it was, maybe we can't understand it, the wall of sound?
It's crazy. As an athlete, you can hear everything on the actual surface. I think the sound just travels down very well. So you hear people, if somebody shouts a comment, you actually hear everything. And I was on the track in South Africa. They speak a language called Afrikaans, and I hadn't heard it in a couple of months. And I was actually I was in the starting blocks, and I ran out. And this guy screamed in Afrikaans, "Oh, you sexy thing!" And it made me laugh. Like I was laughing on the starting blocks, and I was thinking, "No, Oscar, you need to focus. You need to, you got a job to do. You can't be thinking about what you hear in the grandstands." But it really is a special moment, And when you come in on the home straight and you're hearing 80,000 people cheer, it really just gives you the most amazing goosebumps. So it was really an experience. It is hard to describe, but it was fantastic.
No, you did a great job describing it. What do you feel were the challenges that you had to overcome for that moment, and what has been resolved? What have you felt that's gone well?
The challenges, the biggest challenge that I've had to face my whole career is preparing for races. That the intensity at the Olympic Games is such that you've got 16,000 athletes all living in the same confined space. Everybody's got a mandate to fulfill. Everybody sacrificed many things personally, a lot of time. Some athletes may have missed the previous games like I did by a very small margin. So it was 5 years for me going in, but now you've got 16,000 other people that are in the same intensity, with the same goals that they set out and aspirations that they have to fulfill. So it is a very intense environment, and physically, most of the athletes there are in great shape. Some might be a bit injured, but most of them are ready to do the job. But mentally, it's a very hard task. So I'd say that's probably the most difficult thing, is to stay focused. Although it's a single competition, it comprises of many races, and each one has to be treated as an individual target. So, refocusing, staying on top of your game, just analyzing what's happening around you with your competitors, thinking about small things like the elements, your diet, your physical state. It takes a taxing toll on an athlete.
Do you think that you have resolved the issue that no one disabled will never be thwarted in the attempt to compete in the Olympic Games?
Yeah, as far as the prosthetic legs go, we dealt with that in 2008 already. We did a lot of tests at Michigan Institute of Technology. And we went to the Courts of Arbitration for Sport in February, March 2008, and that's been dealt with. But, that was by far the easier part. I think the training in the last 4 years has been the difficult part. And it's fantastic to see how the Paralympic movement's grown. A lot of people's perceptions really changed in London. The British have got a very liberal approach coming to disability. They're very open to education. And being an athlete that had that opportunity to compete there, I think the world watching that at their stage were forced to see it through the eyes of the British, and they gave a great impression of the sport and what athletes living with disabilities are capable of.
Yeah, you have said on many occasions how the British were so forward-thinking about what can Olympic Games and just sport in general learn from that.
You know, I think if you look at the mandate that Lord Seb Coe and his team at the London Organising Committee had, is they never looked at it as London Olympic Games and the London Paralympic Games. They looked at it as the London Games. And if you looked at the Paralympic Games afterwards, it would have been a standalone success event. You know, it was really an independent event with sold-out tickets. They sold 2.2 million tickets, and that was of people that wanted to be there from all across the world. And the way they portrayed it, it was a professional sport. They didn't pity anything. They educated the public about the different classifications. There's some new sports that aren't mainstream sports in the Paralympics. So, you know, to describe those rules has to be very simple for people to stay interested, and yet they did that on a great platform. So I think they really captured people's imaginations around the world, and people that were aware that they were watching a disabled event or an event with athletes who are differently challenged or differently abled. They really stopped after 5 or 6 minutes looking at that, and they just focused on the hardcore sport, the competitive spirit, and after a while they were just as captured as they would have been watching any other sport. And I think that's really what has changed the way people view Paralympic and sport for those with disabilities.
Didn't you say, or you acknowledge that everyone, of course, wants to know your story? I mean, we love human drama and human emotion, but your goal is that it'll be about the performance, not the story.
I think if you follow the story, you know, many times in the past people were saying Paralympic sports are inspirational, yet able-bodied sports or mainstream sports inspirational, but that's not the first thing that comes to mind when I watch a football game. I don't think, wow, these guys are so inspirational. I think there's a lot more to it. And that's the way that I think Paralympic sport should be viewed. You know, there's a lot of people that train extremely hard, and it would be unfair not to give them the recognition to just say that they're inspirational. I see Paralympic sport as hardcore sport. It's come a very long way, especially in very recent years. You know, if you compare Athens in 2004 to London in 2012, the progression, the benchmarks that have been set as far as performances have really evolved, and it's got to a point that a lot of the Paralympic athletes, not only in the UK but internationally, are household names due to the London Games. And I think that's where it needs to be, where people are critical of the sport. You know, when an athlete doesn't perform well, they don't just go, okay, that was inspirational. They go, why isn't this athlete accountable for their actions of not being able to put on a good show? And I think that's the only way that a sport can really progress into a point that it's taken seriously.
That's a terrific way to sum it up. Earlier you heard too, there was a wonderful panel about what the world needs to do, what we all need to do to support athletes. Can you talk about the support that you needed and the support you've gotten and where you'd like it to go?
You know, I think for me, support really needs to come in South Africa and in many countries. You know, you have a lot of teenagers that are very talented. Their work ethic is very good, and at some point, at their late adolescence, moving into adulthood, some of them get distracted. They have that very big change in their social scene between high school and college or university. And many times athletes are lost there. And I think if you can capture talent identification at a young age like that, nurture it, give the athletes the kind of facilities and the guidance that they need from people that have been through those experiences before, that's really where you can get an international sportsman and get him into a program at a young age that he's able to fulfill a very high ranking in society and be an example for the youngsters coming up. And my personal opinion is that's where we need to really focus on.
Well, you talked about, I think you've said, how you were raised without any self-pity. Didn't your mom used to say, hurry up, Oscar, put your legs on?
My mother was very hard-headed. She's a typical South African woman and very independent. And her approach was that when we woke up in the morning, I've got a brother who's 2.5 or a year and a half older than I am. She would just say, you know, Cole, you put on your shoes. Oscar, you put on your legs. And that's the last I want to hear about. There's no disability. And although it wasn't a topic that was swept under the rug necessarily, it was a topic that never had the significance to gain any ground. It was never seen as, I was never given that opportunity to pity myself because I've never had a reason to pity myself. I've got prosthetic legs, which are, you know, something I need to walk, but otherwise my life is extremely normal and it shouldn't be any other way. And I think the perception really does change in society. You know, we have the ability to pity any topic, but disability is not one of them that should be. And I think that often comes not only in disability, but in general in life. If you look at people's perceptions towards something, often when it's a topic we find taboo to talk about or we're not educated about, we seem to have a stereotype about it. And, you know, often I think the previous generations weren't educated about disability from their parents, but we live in an age where information is so readily available. As a parent, I think the responsibility and the onus is on that parent to educate themselves and educate their children. I'll go to the shop sometimes and I see a child and I'll be staring at my prosthetic legs, and the parent will just turn the kid away and say, don't stare, but they don't take the time to educate the kid about it. So I'll go up to the child and I'll say, hi, my name's Oscar and I've got these really cool prosthetic legs, and I might tell a fib, and I'll say, look, I lost my legs because I didn't eat my vegetables, or, say something like I was, got bitten off by a shark or something, and explain to them, that this is my prosthetic leg, but it doesn't bar me from doing anything. It's not a hindrance in my life in any manner. And the child is now educated, and they don't go away with that opinion that this isn't something we talk about. Next time they see somebody with a disability, they might have a warped perception and think, okay, that's what happens when you don't eat your vegetables, but it's at least a step in the right direction. I think that's where this topic stops being taboos, when we educate one another about disability.
And maybe someday, isn't that wonderful? Which is now so important for you, I think, to share with us the work of your foundation and what you're trying to do. It's the reason we're all here is to be inspired and to move forward, and it's terrific news.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been involved being in South Africa and being an African. We often see a lot of people from post-civil wars losing their limbs. Our neighboring country, Mozambique and Angola, they've had many issues when it comes to people that should be contributing to society losing their limbs. And it's the workforce, when you look at dependency level in Africa, it's the highest in anywhere in the world. So for every one person that's employed, 8 people are dependent. And usually without fail, if you're disabled, you're not able to fish, you're not able to subsistence farm, you're not able to contribute to the community. So the projects that I've been involved in for the last 7 years, we've been making prosthetic legs for people with amputations in Africa. But the problem I've often found is that the prosthetic legs are designed by people overseas that don't know the climatic regions. So the prosthetic legs either rust, people often make fires at night to stay warm, so the prosthetics melt. If you look at how many prosthetic legs made, there's over 100,000 a year just made in Africa, yet I think the number is less than 6% are able to use those prosthetic legs after 3 years. So I thought about it a lot, and we went to the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow, and we developed a foot, which we've got a prototype for now, which we should be able to launch by the middle of next year. The whole foot costs under $600. It's heat resistant, it's extremely durable, lifespans between 9 and 12 years, so you're enabling somebody to actually be a part of the community, to contribute to the community and not be a hindrance or deter from the productivity. And I think it's going to be a really amazing project that we're launching next year. The nice thing about it is that you don't need any workspace. You don't need to set up a rehabilitation center. We'll be able to make about just over 200 prosthetic legs per month, and we're going to have it on the back of a 4x4 mobile truck. So you can drive into the most rural of areas and fit a prosthetic leg in under 3 hours, which is something that doesn't exist at the moment. At the moment, they have to cast a patient, often have to find him again or her again in very rural parts without sense of communication is extremely difficult. So we need something, and we've got something now that we can fit a patient. They can come in the morning, by midday walk out with a prosthetic leg. And I'm very excited about it. So
fantastic news. So you will be converting a 4-wheeler basically to drive into the area.
We've been fundraising now for the last 13, 14 months, and we've got some fantastic partners on board. We are always looking for new ones, but I think the work that the project can do is fantastic, and it's not limited. There's hundreds of thousands of people, not only in Africa, in Colombia and South America, in Cambodia. And the nice thing about the project is we can put the truck on a ship and have it rolled out in any country within 3 weeks. So I think it's a fantastic ability for a company to take on as a CSR project, and I really believe that the work that can get done is really going to enable people to contribute back to their communities and give them that gift of mobility back.
What would be the cost of this in case we're going to pass the hat?
Yeah, so the cost of a vehicle is fully, the chassis with the mobile laboratory is 290,000 euros, and the cost of the foot is under $600. So we'll be able to produce the foot either in Europe or in South Africa. We obviously want to do it in South Africa as a thought, because to minimize medical import duties, and the foot will be mostly used in Africa to start off with. and operation costs are fairly low. I think it's about 29,000 euros a month to make 510 prosthetic legs. So it is really fantastic from our point of view, and there's nothing this side that can be done at with that impact, with that durability, and at that cost. So I'm very excited to see the work that we'll be able to do, and I think we'll be able to kick off at about the end of July next year. So you guys can watch the space, and hopefully we're going to have a couple of branded trucks by then. Looking forward to it.
So before we see you in Rio, we will see you driving through Africa?
Yeah, I'd like to be on the ground as much as possible. So, it'll be important for me to make as many visits out there as I can. We've got many ways of fundraising. Well, actually, the one way which I'm extremely excited about is you'll be able to donate on site, on the webpage. And if you donate $600 for a prosthetic leg, we'll actually send you a video of the person whose leg you've made. And we'll have all the title sponsors or partners, credits roll at the bottom, and you'll actually be able to see whose prosthetic leg you've made and made a difference in, because I think all of us have given money to charity at some point, and you often wonder where that money goes. But this is a project that I think is really going to change the way people think. And if I was sitting at home, whether it be in North America or in Asia, and I donated $600, which isn't much money, and I got a video back a couple of weeks later of somebody whose life I've really changed, and not only their life, but the community in which they live, I would be extremely humbled, and I'm sure I'd give as much money as I possibly could in order to change other people's lives as well.
You are such an inspiration. Count me in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Oscar.
Thank you very much. God bless. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stay in your seats. Our scheduled 30-minute